Good evening, dear colleagues. I have a lot of pictures. It will be like cartoons, don't worry. Okay, white space in white space. My contribution is perhaps a case study or illustration of the contribution presented by previous speakers. As Tomáš Pospíšil spoke, according to local art historians, the artistic production of East Europe is not sufficiently confronted with the Western canon, let alone admitted into it. The story that I want to present you is the typical story of Eastern European art history. White space, in Slovak language, biely priestor v bielom priestore, is a work of art that wanted to cross the cultural, political, and social constraints of its environment with transcendency and endless and immaterial pure white space. But paradoxically, these factors make space for the essential work as white space in white space. Even its fate or its position in the history of art, local or Middle and East Europe art history, is typical example of what has been said here. First picture, oh, this one, okay. At first, a few facts. Yes. In 1974, due to the impossibility of officially obtaining exhibition space, the installation Biely priestor v bielom priestore, white space in white space, was exhibited for a few hours in temporarily closed exhibition spaces of the Art Center in Brno, Dom umenia v Brne. The trio of artists who stood behind this installation, Stano Filko, Miloš Laki, and Jan Zavarský, maybe we can, acted collectively in its creation and presentation. According to preserved materials and evidence, white space in white space was publicly presented at least two other times, at the Youth Biennale in Paris in 1975 and at the Gallery of Young Artists in Budapest in 1978, despite the fact that it never had a premiere in Slovakia at the time of its creation. We can reconstruct an authentic picture of Slovak neo-vanguard, particularly concept art, by telling its unique story. Surprisingly and paradoxically, the place of white space in the art historical publication, evaluating the history of the Slovak conceptual art, is rather ordinary, obscure, and marginal. Why? One of the reasons is that white space in white space didn't clearly fit into the defined categories of the concept imported from the Western art history, from especially Western, mainly Anglo-American conceptual art, due to its lack of clarity, its materiality, and the distinctive presence of painting. Its northernese or free position has been a problem for Slovak art history, even despite the awareness of the specifics of conceptual art in Slovakia, which relatively frequently featured cooperation with painting and image. As years passed, we can say that white space in white space was the purifying, like cleaner or filter, paradigmatic break which brought to end slightly pretended unification of the unofficial art community. It's nothing else, white space in white space, divided into two camps. Those who considered white space in white space as daring conceptual work, the opposition to the intellectual aestheticism of the concept of those times, and those who perceived as empty, idealistic, trivial ramblings, blah, blah, blah. Today we know that the conceptual strategies gave a different meaning also to painting, particularly is verifying and testing painting, in asking about its meaning, in shifting and transcending its accepted boundaries. Even standard barriers of Slovak conceptual art, such as Julius Koller, Peter Bartoš, and Runo Sikora, never abandoned painting gesture, and not only because of their academic painting studies, but most certainly because of the fact the concept allowed them to ask about the meaning of their work when the painting and the image were frequently not only symbolic and philosophical, but also the true space for their conceptual journeys. And now my aim or destination. Today we have a chance to interpret the meaning and context of white space in white space less ambiguously and clearly, partly due to the fact that the essential components of the work, white space, including the catalog and its two manifests of white space in white space, are still available for the needs or more detailed study. The testimony of living artists, the period reaction on the art scene. We can also definitely confirm the presence and meaning of the painting within the strategies of Slovak conceptual art through a deeper study of these primary sources from a distance of 40 years from the creation of the work, and with the knowledge of contemporary art history, today's knowledge of the context of the theoretical sources, first of all, of our regional experiences, and the knowledges of Western European and Eastern European art history from Czech, Poland, Hungary, Romania, or countries of the former Yugoslavia. Before we undertake to interpret white space in white space as only an immaterial pure white space as vision of its creators, we must be careful examine the existing material base, fundus, of white space in white space. Based on the documentation of the first installation in the Brno Art Center, several reproductions from the Paris Youth Biennale, and inspection of its existing parts and individual installation in public and private collection. The status or fundus of waste space in waste space according to this is follows. Each installation of white space in white space consisted of an actual real space, latex paintings, strips or fabrics, and cylindrical objects painted by the painting. It consists of linen sheets, canvas, felt sheets, thorax scroll, paper tubes. Linen sheets or felt sheets, if we consider the documentation as basic information for the first installation of white space in white space, it's on a picture, they used large folded linen sheets of various size hanging in the space attached or to the walls or only laid on the floor. They use the painting with sponge roller. Painting with roller is the second agent constructing the white space. The artist emphasized that they were painting collectively, which means that they didn't reveal who held the roller. Tubes. Just a moment. They use the tubes. The tubes for the cylinder as an endless cycle was most certainly present in the birth of the idea of those, to use paper cylinders. Small. This one. Small excursion image of the exhibition. It's a picture of 9th Paris Youth Biennale. The white space in white space installation and the 9th Paris Youth Biennale was reduced to 10 felt strips of approximately 3 meters in length, hanging vertically on a wall next to each other. The second yet first truly public presentation featured the felt strips and was only signed by 2 artists. Very important thing is signature. The signature and its graphic scheme, which an informative reference to their collective artistry, is a different constitutive element. The year 1973 or 1974 is usually indicated in the upper line under which the signatures Safilko, Mlaki, and Jan Zavarsky are found. There are gray painting signature in printing letters signed by each artist separately. The routine roller painting, together with the indistinguishable handwriting of the artist, were done not only suppression of ego. They also distinguished themselves from the convention of the socialist art operation of that time. Also, they pretended to be guided by different rules. They never took a stand against the traditional status of work of art based on artistry as a significant confirmation of artistic and economic capital. However, it's obvious that the absolute erasing of the creator was not their intent. By failing to acknowledge it, they would have cancelled out the uniques of such as absolutely transcendentally intended project. Catalog. I returned them. Catalog, I must always be emphasized that the existence of white space in white space was and is unimaginable without the catalog that accompanied the Brno Night exhibition. It was not only a common informative document, but the parallel and only public presentation of this act and work. It even assumed the role of substitute medium, because after its third and last installation in 1978, White Space in White Space was packed up and placed in the storage and studios of its creators. The catalog consists of 2 sets of pictorial attachment with 16 black and white photographs, a text by theoretician Jiří Valoch in Czech and English, and the manifest White Immaterial Space in a pure white endless space in Slovak, English, French, and German. The title on the cover, let's see, Bielý priestor v bielom priestore, it's also presented in translation in English, French, and German with the names of its 3 creators, Stano Filko, Miloš Laki, Jan Zavarsky. Also, the ambitions of the artists were eliminated by collective attribution. The obvious testimony of the grandiosely outlined catalog is proof that the growing political and cultural normalization and declared anonymity apparently didn't stand in the way of their artistic and art production inspiration. The catalog, which was published without outside help, as samizdat, with a print run of approximately 1,000, was inserted in envelopes with the seal of the artist's senders. Return. Manifest. The last and most controversial part of the catalog is Manifest, contained 12 points and was also presented in a fold-up form. In the first paragraph, the artists distanced themselves from the art of object, environment, concept, hyperrealism, minimal art, lyrical and post-geometric abstraction. They also abandon the reality in question and don't try to acquire any knowledge about this world. From everything that constitutes the artistic environment, individual points of the manifest proceeded from specific proclamation regarding what white space in white space represents to psychological theoretical formulation, defining the desires of the creators for absolute, pure art and endless space. In the first introductory text, Jiří Valoch indicated 2 possible future collisions which the community of artists favoring conceptual art at that time could understand as betrayal or conspiracy and a retreat, like get away or escape from conceptual principles. White space in white space was perceived as a return to the most conservative medium, painting, the forbidden symbol of representation and depiction. The creators of white space in white space projected the concept, the fiction of the immaterial and endless space, but through material and visual means. Also, Valoch defends this materialistic act as speculative. The third installation and gallery of young artists in Budapest. The photo documentation from this implementation or installation doesn't exist. So far, it has not been publicized anywhere, nor has it been found in the artist archives. Maybe I will find it. But we have catalog and the second manifest. This manifest was even more radical in the statesman than the first, and its self-confident reluctance to explain and make clear was possible even solipsistic. Despite the inner logic and outer context, it's a defense of the consciousness of otherness of vice space in vice space towards the environment from which it came. The artistic contributed individual paragraphs to the manifest with self-confident naivete, which today appears as attractive, but at the time of the publication of such as confidently declarative text, they couldn't have been surprised by the unfavorably nasty or cool reaction. The second manifest, the charmed and not explanatory diction of the second manifest was probably a response to irritated reaction of the unofficial artistic community. Vice space in vice space was perceived as an opposition gesture which attacked the area untouchable at the time conceptual dogmas. Some statements of Jan Zawarsky, the one of creators of a vice space in vice space. After the death of Julius Kohler in 2007, a unique period document was found in his estate, a 9-page manuscript, which is an analytical and critical and particularly dialogical debate of the first manifest of vice space in vice space. Kohler, your critical script or document called Fiction of the Space, which de facto doesn't exist. He takes exception to almost every notion and terminological phrase or statements, and even questions the level of theoretical thinking of the artists themselves. The Kohler's text is not dated, but it's probably originated in the middle of the 1970s, after the publication of the catalogue and manifest for the Brno installation. For Julius Kohler, vice space in vice space was a mystification and an imperfect, naive act. He saw the essential discrepancy between the dilettantish notions such as pure art, idea of endless emptiness, and pure sensibility, and their unacceptable use of paintings as traditional impure matter. He was convinced that so-called free, purely sensible thinking flows in immaterial space didn't need material space and shouldn't use material print, advertising, money, connection, preferential treatment, permission, visual art of the other materials. The only material needed was the human brain, he wrote, free intellect, which, however, must be ever of the material reality. Many written documents from the 1960 and 1980 that were found in Kohler's estate react to events in the artistic community. Avril Hrabošický, a thorough interpreter of Kohler's operation, explains Kohler's graphomaniacal uniqueness by analytical and taxonometric thinking, which appeared not only in conceptual statements, but also in his criticism, and revealed a rich vocabulary and self-study of linguistically oriented philosophy. First and foremost, reading the wide special manifest probably irritated him, but its free and unconventional argumentation, terminological inconsistencies, and anarchistic pathos. The studies of Waloch, Becke, and Strauss, that was an author who was write some sentences, some text in the second catalog. In the second and last catalog of the Jiří Waloch, László Becke, and Thomas Strauss of the Vice Space in Vice Space exhibition in 1978 at the Budapest Youth Gallery are in fact responses to the awkward reaction from the unofficial art scene. Their presence in the catalog is evidence of the acceptance of the role of advocates of painting gesture, monochromatic reduced painting is a possible conceptual strategy. The argumentation of these art historians took approximately the same route to Malevich and his confrontation of absoluteness, perhaps in search for an artistic model for the pure sensitivity of white space in white space, which went beyond the mentality of rational minimalist art and orthodox concepts. Thomas Strauss, like Laszlo Beke, reaches for the certainty of the Malevich-like theme. However, he approaches is through his knowledge of minimalist art. The reduction of shape and color opened a new possibility and undisturbed perception which allowed their sensory, optical, and tactile qualities to stand out. He wrote, "It's not longer destroyed in the name of minimalist asceticism. On the contrary, it's reconstructed." The slightly foggy reference to the reputed Russian avant-gardists probably was based on the Malevich boom in Czechoslovakia. By the end of the 1960s, thanks to trips the USSR, the Soviet Union, and their knowledge of Russian language, theoretician Jiří Padrta, Miroslav Lamač, Ivan Niroz, and Slovak Oskar Čepan acquired unique access to Malevich, therefore unknown texts and documents that differed from his Western European canonic interpretation of those days, which was based on Malevich's crucial publication, Non-Objective World, from 1927, published in the Bauhaus Bucher edition. The created an alternative to the Western version of the simplified perception of Malevich's message by publishing texts that were unknown until then. While the Western European Malevich was a painter of the non-material world, the newly discovered artist was the creator of the philosophical and architectural visionary suprematism. At the beginning of his missing connection link between white space and previous conceptual work of Stano Filko, as the beginning of the deliberation of Thomas Strauss, a theoretician who was in close contact with the creators of white space in white space, admitted his initial distrust of their solitary act, which seems to be out of the domestic context. He could not see the necessary connected link between white space in white space and the previous conceptual work of these artists. Today, this apparently missing link can be documented thanks to obtaining access to the available detailed research such as Filko pneumatic environments and his extensive cycle of association from 1960s. They feature the graphic or special depiction, the pulsating expansion of the possible tension of two spaces. Filko later transfers the motif of the circular image of the universe of concentric circles from association into series of drawings on paper dated at the beginning of the 1970s. Ephemeral drawings of universe schemes as concentric cycles depicted in pencil, ink, or fine perforation can also be understood as a penetration into other spaces. In my opinion, this obviously belongs to the different theme, the theme of transcendence, which is Strauss' missing link between the cosmic concept of association and the metaphysical project, white space in white space. In 1975, Miloš Laki dies. Jan Zavarsky leaves for the world of theater stage design. And in 1981, Stano Filko emigrates. Only Filko continues to pursue the route to absoluteness with the previous force or power provide special sensibility and sensitivity to his own interpretation of transcendence. He publishes new text declaration and sublimates transcendence into the idea of white by negate artistic ego through dematerialized painting gesture. After the end of the team effort, white space in white space disappears for several decades, not only from the attention of the general public of supporters, and not only be placing in the basements and storages, but even literally. The package containing the installation returning from the Paris EOS Biennale from 1975 gets lost somewhere in a Bratislava customs office. Upon being notified that they would have to pay a high customs duty, the artistic agreed that they should declare the package as a worthless, non-artistic item and leave it its own destiny. The gradual silent forgetting came to end the revolutionary year of 1989. Maybe it was not such a surprise that the first edition, the new post-revolutionary art historical journal Profil, opened with the unfinished affair cause of white space in white space. The introductory text by art theoretician Jana Geržová was a defense of editorial selection, since the competition among undiscovered works which deserved media attention was most certainly huge at the time. But the reputation of the controversial work, burdened by ambiguous acceptance, was an attractive occasion to try to bring to life the previously frozen discussion, now in the space of a free artistic scene. But despite the intent of the editors, there was no conclusion or closing of the case, except 2 interviews with Filko and Zavarsky and Lucky's commemorative reminiscences. The plan dissolved into reverent discussion which only confirmed its existence and already known facts. Also, the physical and inaccessibility of white space in vessel, problems with installation, with the mentioned collective artistry, of course, resulted the fragmentation of the work in the Slovak art history. The personal history of white space in white space hold up a mirror to the constructing of domestic art history, because its architecture should prevent works which, for our context, are essential and unique, from falling through leaky models which were constructed for different art fields and situations. As Thomas Strauss once prophetically characterized the Slovak concept, it was perhaps everything: philosophy, religion, psychology, and noetics, and nothing at the same time. Thus, the structure of this virtually esoteric story should certainly not be made of prefabricated panels. However, white space in white spaces, despite its present fragmentary appearance in various exhibition projects and in sporadic attempts at its archiving under various chapters of neo-avant-garde art, still bravely carries is a burden of only on suspected iconic work, and as it is gradually shown, its unclear proposition are not only signs of accidental tarnishing. On the contrary, this work presents itself as a typical product of the Central Europe or Slovak art scene, which is slowly getting used to similarly choked works and demands its ownership right to them. And it's a good news. And conclusion for discussion: white space in white space is an iconic work of the Slovak, former Czechoslovak concept of the 1970s, with its specific signs of the marginal impurity of the conceptual genre. It is also the evidence that the conceptual bastard, even which impure proposition, can be a typical product of the Central European art scene. Thank you. If I can, I would ask, or my first question I would like to put to Laszlo Beke, because Laszlo Beke was very close to white space in 1970, and I want to ask you, what do you mean about this about this act of these trio authors? Maybe I'm not true.
No, it's very, very funny, the situation, because first I wanted to tell you that it's an exemplary presentation of like an academic thesis to demonstrate and complex artwork. But the problem is a lot of problem. That is a proof of my thesis that an artwork is a black hole or a white space. You never understand the wholeness. You give new interpretation and new interpretation, again new interpretations. Now I totally forgot about what I was writing in that time. But later I will reconstruct what I told, but I forgot. But I have new interpretations now. And first of all, now I see clearly that the historical signification of the work was the transition from conceptualism of the new painting. But in the same time to abandon the painting and come over to the conceptualism, to kind of transitory work. And the second thing, it was reconstructed and put again in Hungary 2 years ago, I think, the Vasarely Museum by Dora Maurer, and emerged a lot of problem of interpretation, how to put it in a new context. And we found a very interesting and forgotten detail that during the stay in Budapest, they realized as a private white space in a private place as I remember well, in the studio of Miklos Erdély. It's remained on the wall, and a materialization of this white space, again like an object. And this other aspect, and the basic thing I think is the same context as support surface, better to say support surface group in Paris in the beginning of the 70s. Louis Kahn, les gens comme ça, these people. And I forgot totally about this, and I still don't know if they were aware of these people who was interested in a materialistic way and the support of the painting and the surface of the painting. A lot of more detail I will explain you later. I hope it will be interesting for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there some other questions?
Yes. Well, my question goes also to Laszlo Baker, because he has been knowing the group, and I was struck, not knowing this group, by also not only by the proximity to Support Surface, but also to Yves Klein, because with his White Room and also with the chèque d'immatérialité, de sensibilité, and I was wondering if you know perhaps if there was any connection, if Klein work was known or not at all, if it is just a parallel, that because it is also a very esoteric, and Yves Klein was very esoteric. So I was just wondering if there was any connection.
May I answer with one word? I don't think that they were aware of the parallelism of Yves Klein, because everybody in this time was totally full with the blue. And I was very surprised in about 74 or 75, I have seen the White Room of Yves Klein in Mönchengladbach. Not Kassel. No, it's a small village round by Krefeld. Okay, as I have seen in Krefeld, and it was supposed like a secret room of Yves Klein. So I don't think that Jan Zawarsky and these people was aware of the fact. So it is rather the Malevich way and this.
Pedro Lorente from AICA, Spain. I'd like to congratulate you, first of all, for your presentation with images. You shouldn't take everything for granted because we come from far away, and since this was on the other side of the Iron Curtain, it's out of the blue for us. So I'm very glad to see and listen at the same time. But also, since I don't know much about the scenario, the museographical involvement of these white spaces, I wonder how wide were these white spaces inside museums in the East? Because, well, of course, it was an Eastern European invention because the Museum of Modern Art, Alfred Barr, took it from a trip made in Eastern Europe up to Russia. But then it became a symbol of the MoMA and of the Western way of being, of Western culture. So I rather suppose, but I don't know, maybe you could tell us, that museums in Eastern European countries were not so wide inside. And that gallery in Bratislava was very modern, was very westernized. So in the end, your conclusion was a surprise for me, because you said this is a very typical expression of Slovakian art. So, because it was rather exceptional, wasn't it? Or it's just the reverse, I don't know.
If I understand...
How wide were the walls of museums in general and modern art museums in particular?
If I come back in 1970s, I know it from photographs, and the first and last really installation was in 1974 in these museums in Brno. And I think it's maybe it first and last time when they exhibited it. Maybe that it's in Budapest, but I think it's not connected with this institution and when the wall, no.
Sorry for an inconvenient question. No, not really.
As far as I know, that gallery was just before the major renovation. So I imagine that the walls were actually quite gray, or the white was not a new gray. These walls were used for many, many, many years. And just a little detail, there was a big Yves Klein exhibition with big catalog in Prague in 1968.
Yes.
So maybe it's not out of the question that there might have been some knowledge that leaked.
I think that these creators have known Yves Klein. I suppose that they don't.
I mean, in the West, every modern art museum will be white at that period. From the 50s
Yes,
to
maybe.
the 60s, maybe not so much in the 70s already.
I
But
think in
I was
1970s,
surprised
in Slovakia and in former Czechoslovakia, yes, we have white wall too.
You see, you are not that different.
There's another question.
Well, thank you.
This is a very interesting piece because even though the underlying concept is very different,
Yes.
but in listening and examining this piece, immediately comes to mind the work of Mel Bochner, who in the 1970s was dealing with the space of which artworks were being shown. And he was dealing with measurements of space. And it was very interesting because I did his first survey show in 1986. And I asked him what he was doing. And this could relate back to Laszlo Becky and your question. When I asked Buckner what he was doing, because some of the pieces were very strange, he said, I was trying to build a language. I was trying to understand what is art, what is painting, what is sculpture. So there's an interesting, it's different, and yet there's a correlation, and I'm certain the group did not have any idea of what Buckner was doing. So it's an interesting simultaneity. It's just an interesting observation.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, thank you very much. We are